They thought the land was abandoned. Dry, forgotten, unsupervised, a perfect spot for expansion. But beneath that cracked earth were the memories of one man, the name written into every grain of soil, Aiden Cross. He was a veteran, one who came back from war with more scars in his head than on his skin. The world had moved on without him. But this land, his land, was the only thing that still remembered his footsteps. The HOA called their project Paradise Vista. They forged documents, bribed officials, and laid foundations across all 35 plots. To them, it was profit. To Aiden, it was theft of a heartbeat. When he returned to find heavy machinery tearing through his father's old fields, he didn't yell. He didn't threaten. He just stood still in the dust, like a ghost observing the living. From that moment, every beat of his heart turned to ice. He went to the town office to protest. They ignored him. He went to court. They delayed him. He spoke to the sheriff. They shrugged. To them, he was just another angry man with no proof. To the developers? He was a problem to erase. When the HOA sent their attorney to talk him down, she expected a negotiation. But she did not expect him. Elena Ward, ruthless, poised, brilliant. A woman whose heels clicked like gunshots in hallways. She believed that silence was power and that people only mattered when money flowed through them. But when she looked into Aiden's eyes during their first meeting, something shifted. The man before her was not just angry. He was broken in such a precise way, a way that made her uneasy. Maybe even curious. He didn't yell. He didn't beg. He simply said, "You built on my land." Not one house. 35. Elena slid a folder toward him, legal documents, apparently proving otherwise. But Aiden pushed it back gently and said, "Paper doesn't grow roots." "I do." She didn't know how to respond. That night, she looked up his military record. Aiden Cross. Honorable discharge. Special operations. 5 confirmed rescues. 0 confirmed kills. The report said, highly controlled under pressure. But tendency to detach emotionally from surroundings. She read that last line twice. It scared her, because she understood it. Days passed. She kept visiting. She claimed it was for legal reasons, but deep down, she came because something about him felt dangerous in a way that made her heart beat louder. One evening, she found him near the edge of the land at sunset, hands in his pockets, staring at the homes. Families were moving in. Lights inside the houses glowed like stolen stars. "You're losing this case," she said quietly. But Aiden didn't turn around. He said only 5 words, "They already lost this land." Elena felt a chill when he said that. Later that night, his cabin was searched. His papers were taken. But instead of breaking, he grew unervingly calm. The silence became part of him. And in that silence, something else began, something darker than vengeance. Aiden started visiting an old part of the property, one the HOA hadn't mapped, an area hidden behind dead trees and heavy brush. Elena followed one night. And when she saw what he was looking at, she finally understood. There was a dam. Old but still functional. And he was studying it. Not to fix it. But to use it. And that was the moment she realized, this wasn't a dispute. It was a countdown. Elena stood in front of the mirror that night, staring at her reflection as though she could interrogate it. Aiden Cross. The name kept echoing in her head. She had met men who threatened, sued, yelled, but he did none of that. He was the kind who made silence feel like a ticking bomb. The more she tried to distance herself from him, the more her pulse betrayed her. She knew his past. She knew his trauma. Yet something inside her whispered, "You're walking toward danger, willingly." That night, the wind blew harder than usual. Clouds crawled across the sky like they were hiding something. Elena drove to the edge of the property again, headlights cutting through the darkness. She expected to find him at the cabin. But the cabin was empty. The door was slightly open, like a warning, or an invitation. On the table lay a notebook with pages covered in sketches, scribbles, and arrows pointing to a specific area of land. The dam. Her heart sank. She had heard rumors of it before, an old structure built decades ago for irrigation. It was never on any HOA development maps. Why? Because developers avoid what they don't understand. But Aiden understood it perfectly. She followed the trail behind the cabin, twisted roots, dead branches, mud soaked with recent rain. Her shoes were ruined, but she didn't stop. What was she doing? She was a lawyer. She dealt with evidence, not forest trails. But something stronger than logic pulled her forward. It wasn't justice. It wasn't guilt. It was curiosity wrapped in something darker. She spotted him. Standing near the dam controls. Motionless. The moonlight cut across his face, half-shadowed, half-revealed, like he was made of two separate men stitched into one body. "You're following me now?" he asked, not turning around. "I need to know what you're planning," she replied, breath uneven. He didn't answer for a long moment. She thought he wouldn't. But then he spoke softly, almost like he was confessing a prayer. "They built 35 homes, without asking the land if it could hold them. What happens when nature gets tired of carrying their weight?" Elena stepped closer. The dam loomed beside them, its machinery still intact. Rusty. But alive. She noticed something. The manual control wheel was untouched, but the area around it had been cleared recently. Purposefully. Prepared. "You're not doing this legally," she whispered. "I tried legally," he said. "The law listens to money. But water listens to gravity." A crack of thunder broke the silence above them. She should have been terrified. She should have run straight to the police. But instead, she reached out, and placed her hand on his. Her fingers were trembling. His were steady. "Don't make me witness this," she said. "Then close your eyes," he replied. Minutes passed. Or maybe seconds. She couldn't tell. And then together, they turned the wheel. From deep inside the dam, something roared awake. A surge. A release. A flood waiting for a command. The water didn't just move. It remembered the land. And it obeyed. That was the night Paradise Vista stopped being paradise. And started becoming evidence. The interrogation room smelled like metal and cold coffee. Aiden sat in the center, hands cuffed, posture straight. They expected him to look afraid. But fear had left him years ago, on a battlefield that none of the officers here could imagine. To them, he was a suspect. To him, this was finally quiet. Across the one-way glass, the CID team watched him. Files stacked on the table. Drone footage. Aerial shots of flooded houses. Interviews with families who lost everything. The HOA claimed it was a natural disaster. But nature doesn't turn a control wheel. Nature doesn't erase 35 homes in under an hour. Nature doesn't leave footprints that match the boots of Aiden Cross. The door opened. Elena walked in, not as his attorney, but as another suspect. Her wrists weren't cuffed, but her eyes were guarded. She sat across from him without saying a word. The silence built a wall between them, yet somehow, a bridge too. She didn't look at him. She was afraid that if she did, she would forget which side of the law she was on. The CID officer stood behind them, voice sharp. "We know someone assisted him. The dam doesn't open easily. Tell us who helped you, Aiden." He finally looked at Elena. The officer waited for words, but something else filled the room instead. A pulse. A memory. The moment when her hand rested on his as the wheel turned. She wasn't innocent. Yet she wasn't guilty either. She was something more dangerous. She was willing. Aiden leaned forward. I opened it. The officer slammed the table. Who else? Elena's fingers tightened beneath the table. She braced herself. But Aiden didn't glance at her again, not with fear, nor betrayal, but protection. I opened it alone, he repeated. No one else touched that wheel. The officer stared at him for a long time. Then he turned to Elena. Is that true? Elena swallowed. Every part of her body screamed to confess, to cleanse her name. But when she finally spoke, her voice was steady. She gave the answer that sealed both their fates. It opened itself. The officer shook his head and left the room. The door shut. They were alone. Her voice trembled for the first time. Why did you protect me? He looked at her, not with softness, but with something darker. Because you didn't try to stop me. You're going to take the fall, she said. 10 years. Maybe more. He shrugged, as if time no longer mattered. I've survived worse places than prison. She didn't know whether to cry, or confess the truth, that in those final seconds, she wanted to open the dam with him. She wanted to watch it all drown. Not out of anger, but out of some strange, dark desire to see the world fall apart beside him. As officers returned to escort him out, she finally met his eyes. And in the coldest moment of her life, she understood something terrible. Love wasn't always a rescue. Sometimes, it was the crime. And sometimes, like water, it never stopped flowing.